Tim, your response to me in your first point was a straw man argument. I'm not going to articulate why because I don't think it would do any good. All I'll say is, if you want to know why your first point is a straw man argument, please re-review my initial video response to you from 122 through 136. In response to your second point, Tim, the first premise is not being reconstructed to attack a straw man. The first premise is absolutely true and correct. The problem is, it doesn't help to prove God exists, nor prove God created the universe. It can only do that at the level of inference. In other words, underneath the surface. And underneath the surface, that premise is just a dishonest attempt to exclude God from having to be causally accounted for. Instead of saying everything that exists is a cause, which is grounded in reality, it is reconstructed to only say whatever begins to exist is a cause, which is obviously meant to exclude God from needing a cause, in order to prove what the KCA sets out and wants to prove, since God is already defined as beginningless. Your response in your point 3 is irrelevant. The Kalam commits a special pleading fallacy at the level of inference underneath the surface, because there is no reason to fashion a premise that specifically targets only things that begin to exist, unless the intent is to create a double standard for God, which is exactly what the first premise is designed to do, because all things in reality begin to exist. So targeting only things that begin to exist is simply a covert way, again, covert way of excluding God from the same reality that applies to all things. It's a way to define God out of requiring a cause. Your claims in point 4 fail because it commits the fallacy of circular reasoning. Saying it is logically impossible for God to have a cause because it follows from the very concept of God means nothing. It's meaningless since it has no basis in reality. There is no entity that exists in reality that did not have a cause. So saying God, who is conceptually another entity, does not have a cause simply because the concept entails it is fallacious and meaningless. It is fallacious, Tim, because your claim reduces to saying God does not have a cause because it follows logically from the very concept of God. And because it follows from the very concept of God, God does not have a cause. That fails. It's a fallacy of circular reasoning because it only refers to its own referring. It has no basis in reality. In order to rescue such a claim, you would have to find a single thing/entity in reality that is uncaused. Your claim would be like me saying it is logically impossible for Gusha, the gutter god, to have a cause. Not because I define Gusha that way, but because it follows logically from the very concept of Gusha since he's a god. Does that mean anything ontically and factually? Absolutely not. In response to your fifth point, Tim, you commit a straw man argument. I did not say the second premise is a fallacy of equivocation, but a fallacy of ambiguity. You then go on to claim that I provide no evidence to justify the claim that creation ex nihilo is impossible. I could easily do this, but after studying the situation, I feel the person named Cliff, who debated with Gill, provided perfect logical argumentation for why creation ex nihilo is impossible. Cliff says that something existing causing something non-existent to begin existing is not only without evidence or support, but logically incoherent. Cliff is absolutely correct here, and his point is devastating to theism. To paraphrase his fantastic articulation, for God to cause energy, time, space, and matter, energy, time, space, and matter must be causally influenced by God. Problem is, if energy, time, space, and matter didn't exist, then energy, time, space, and matter cannot be causally influenced by God. Energy, time, space, and matter would literally have to exist before itself in order for God to cause energy, time, space, and matter to begin existing. To put this to you even more powerfully, in order for me to create something made of wood, wood would have to already exist. I cannot create something made of wood from non-wood. Saying that God is an efficient cause does not solve this logical impossibility. It only delays what you cannot show, which is how a being like God can create something from nothing. An efficient cause is by definition the agency that brings about the change. An agent has to have something to change before it can bring about said change to begin with. Reduced even further, you have to show how space can come from non-space. How does time come from non-time? How does energy come from non-energy? How does the physical come from that which is non-physical? Until you solve these logical impossibilities, Tim and Gill, and the covert fallacies entailed in the KCA, atheists and secular individuals are more than justified and warranted in dismissing the Kalam Cosmological Argument as fallacious, unconvincing, and invalid evidence for the existence of God.